This is Gemara Avodah Zarah Daf Nun Ches, and in reality, we're holding on the top line of Nun Ches Amud Aleph. But let's go back for a few short moments to Nun Zayin and Beis in beginning this story. We're about 10 lines from the bottom. The first word of the line is Delay. Avodah, there was a story. Where did this story take place? Asa Akom Ayla Chanuta di Israel. A guy entered into the store of a yid. Amrlu Islachu Chamer Lezavuni. Do you have wine to sell? Amru Leilai. Haviyasav Chamer V'Tivla. So after the yid said he does not have wine for sale, there was wine sitting in the bucket. Shadi Beyade. The guy sticks his hand inside the bucket. Sheikh Shech Bey, and he agitates. He moves around the wine. Amrlu Haylav Chamru. Is this not wine? Shagle hayach berischa shadye ledana. The owner angrily takes the bucket that the guy just finished putting his hand in and pours it lidana, pours it into the cask of wine. And obviously the shaila now is that by the guy touching the wine, we would think the wine in the bucket, he made it usher. Now that you poured the wine in the bucket into the regular vat of wine, l'chayra, it should make the vat of wine usher. This would be similar to a case of someone taking, a bucket full of treif, which we think that's what the wine is when a guy touches it, and pours it into your bucket full of kosher. Sharje Rava lizavine la'akum. So Rava says it is a mutter to do what? Let's be careful. Lizavine, to sell to goyim, not to drink it, to get benefit. If legali Ravuna, 2 lines at the bottom, Ravuna Barachina argues, Ravuna Breder Ram Nachman. Navki Shapuri de Rava. So the shofar of Rava went out, Visharu. Navki Shapuri de Ravuna Barachina, Ravuna Barava, Nachman Va'asri. So we have a machlekes, what is the status of this larger barrel of wine? Is there an Isra Hana or not? We turn over to today's Daf Nun Ches Amud Aleph, and the Gemara continues the story. A time later, Ikler Ravuna Breder Ram Nachman B'chusa. Ravuna Breder Ram Nachman comes to B'chusa Amle Rava Yakam. Shamei, Rava said to his attendant Rava Yakam, Taroik, Gale, lock the doors, Lo Nesi, and she didn't hit it al Gabe. So I see, and she didn't hit it. We don't want people to disturb. Oli Gabe, but who comes in? Oli Gabe Ravuna by Rav Nachman. Amrlei. So Ravuna says to Rava, Ki agavna mai. What's the status? The guy touches the bucket's poured with the rest of the wine. What is the din? Amrlei. So responds Rava, Aser afilu behano. Can't get any benefit, you can't even sell the wine. Ask the Gemara of Amaru Damar Shishach Ein Oise Yayin Nesach. You are the opinion that being Meshachshech, the moving around the wine, does not create Ayin Nesach. Explains the Gemara, no, we have to understand. What was I referring to when I said you let us sell the wine? Is except except the value of that wine. So an interesting middle level chiddush, that what? You could get benefit, but not for that wine itself. It's mixed. So you have to subtract the dollar value what that wine would have been worth. And you have to, the rest you could get benefit from. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. Was there ever a tzad that the value of that extra wine you could get benefit from? So Amar Rava, Ki Asi L'Bamedisa. When he came to Bamedisa, Afka Nachmeni Shemaitza Masita Daser. Nachmeni came over yelling and screaming different Amoraim and Abraisa that show the wine in the bucket is Aser. Shemaitza, what's the Braisa? Masnita Daser. Shemaitza is what? The Who of the Avener Dai. Vaser Shmuel B'Tiveria. Vaser, excuse me. Benar Dai Vaser Shmuel B'Tiveria Vaser Nachmen. V'Amrilei. Why? Fishe'enon B'nei Torah. Because they're not b'nei Torah, if you chayshish that they touch the wine. V'Amar Li, and Abaye responded, Tver Benar Dai in B'nei Torah. The Mechuza B'nei Torah. I don't understand what you're talking about. There's always Goyim, there's always not. So why? Are you creating this level, of chilek between the stories? That was the Brisa. Continues Rava. Masnita, smack him in the Amid. The first one in line is Da Gardim. In the Mishnah that taught us the Gardim Akom Shekodach B'Minekes Velo. So we have the Gardimin, who's a superintendent, who's a guy who made a hole on the cask with a tube, and he sucked up the straw inside, and he sucked up some of the wine. Or he took a little sip and he threw the rest back in. And they came along and they said the wine in that cask is usher. My love, says the Gemara Behana. And therefore we see simply in our case, it should be the sad Isser. Says the Gemara, Loi, Pishti, just means the actual drinking. Yachilis the Yimkar, Kiritani Seifa. Why don't you just say there's such a case? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why not. Kiritani Seifa. Cherem Akum Shahisha Yadeh Lachavis. Kesaver Shal Shem and Ayah put his hand in, he thought it was oil. V'nimsei Shal Yayin. Zeh Ma'isa, this is the story. V'amru Yimaker, so you get benefit. Tiyovta, Derava, Tiyovta. So we see that Lamaisa, the Gemara is paskening that you could just get benefit, not like Shitas Rava. Continues the Gemara with another case, very similar, of a guy touching the wine, 8 lines from the bottom. Rav Yechon ben Arzav, Rav Yisrael ben Nehorai, Havayasi, they were sitting with Kashasi Chamar drinking wine. Asu Gavra Amalei Tashkin. Came a guy and give me a drink. Lebazar de Rama Igalia. Mil Sadak. Who, after he already poured the wine into his cup, the guy said he's a guy. Chadasa afilu ba'ana, v'chad shari afilu b'shtira. So you have both ends of the spectrum. Even either this item is completely aser afilu b'hana, or the item is completely mutter afilu b'shtiya. Rav Yeshua ben Levi man de aser shapir aser man de shari shapir shari. Says Rav Yeshua ben Levi, both are correct. Now, how is that possible? Explains the Gemara. Man de aser. According to the opinion that says it is aser, as we turn over to the reason why it would be aser meimaram is hakadah derabanan. Kani shechor kashasi. The Rabbanan held that they would drink something simple like shechri, like beer, kashasi. Alavade chamru, rather, it must be that it is wine. And since he knew he was holding the wine, we have to worry that he touched it and he poured it Avodah Zarah. So according to the opinion that says it's aser, is that we have to be chayish that he knew that this was wine, and as he was pouring, he was doing a Avodah Zarah. And on the third line down, man de shari shaper shari, why? Meimer amar salchadedach derabanan kiani chamar kashasu. The reason is because he thinks, is it possible that the Rabbanan will be drinking wine? V'amar lei dita tashkinan. Can it be that they're drinking wine and they're offering me, a guy, a drink? Elavada, he thought to himself, shechru, must be they're drinking beer, kashasu. And therefore, v'loi nasche, we don't have to be concerned that when pouring it, he poured it le Avodah Zarah. Says the Gemara, 1 second. You're suggesting that this guy thinks they're drinking beer. But they see that it is wine. Says the Gemara, was that night? They smell the wine. Says the Gemara, new wine which doesn't smell so much. But he touched it with a ladle. Very good that he might not have known. But since it's a classical guy touching it, shaloi b'kavana, and it's going to be usher to drink. So how could there be an opinion that says it's mutter? Like 10 lines down, the first one line is lie. Says the Gemara to Kamarik Aruki. The case is he didn't use the ladle, but rather he poured it directly into a cup. And of course, each of these levels is a different level and a fine nuance. It's a case of koyach. It's a case of the strength of the guy shloi b'kavana. Chol koyach shloi b'kavana, says the Gemara, loy gazru be'rabbanan, that even if it's even a lower level than mago shloi b'kavana, because he didn't actually touch it, but rather he poured it shloi b'kavana. And one can imagine that in each of these levels, tremendous halachic ramifications. Says the Gemara, another Shayla Baimini Ravasi Rav Yechlan. Yayin Shem Sachai Akuma. What is the law regarding wine that a guy misachai diluted it with water? V'amarlei ve'ima mazgai. Why don't you say mazgai? Why use this interesting word Shem Maschai? Amarlei Ravasi responds, "Anakidechsev kamina." I'm using the pasuk, the wording of the pasuk. Tavchai tavcha maschayina. She slaughtered meat that alluded to the wine. Amarlei, and Rabbi Yechlan says, Lashon Torah la'atzma, Lashon Chachamim la'atzmai. No, you should talk differently. Don't use the words that the Torah uses. Now that we got over the right word to use, whether the word is mascha, whether it is mazga, Lashon Torah, Lashon Chachamim, says the Gemara, okay, tachlis, mai, what's the halacha of the guy that alluded to the wine? Amar Lei, Rav Yechlan says, Aser. Why? Misham, we know the rule. We tell a Nazir to stay far away. So too says the Gemara. It's true he didn't touch the wine with his hand or with another item. But since he caused the wine, to be moved, this as well creates an isser. Says the Gemara, and let's show a case in which we've seen this. Rav Yirmiyah Klai L'Savta. Rav Yirmiyah went to a place called Savta Chazach Hamra Demazgi Akav Ishti Yisrael Minei. He saw wine that Goyim diluted with water and Yidden drank from. Vishti Yisrael Minei. V'aser lu misham lech lech hamra nazir schar schar lekarma loy sikrav. And furthermore, a similar din to Ranami Rabbi Yechon Ravasi Rabbi Yechon Yain Shamazgo Yakum Aser. Why? Misham lech lech hamra nazir schar schar lekarma loy sikrav. We'll stop over here. The incredible rule that we're learning, that even though ostensibly maybe one would think it's mutter, but due to the distance necessary to stay away from any potential yain nesach, pick it up from here. B'siyata dishmaya.